is going on? So, we're out here working on the truck again. Out here on the K24 swap on the 720. So update from last video. If you all remember, we added the air box and we also wired the O2 sensor in an attempt to see if we can get the truck to run a little bit better. We got those wired up, and then we tried to move the truck, and we were having clutch engagement issues. The clutch was not disengaging all the way, no matter how hard I pushed the pedal down. And I do, I checked the fluid level, and everything is bled right. I think I still need to do a little bit more bleeding, but I hadn't done any bleeding since I changed the master cylinder, which was ages ago. So an update on that. I worked a little bit after, and I was thinking about it, and then I had an aha moment. And I looked at the gap between the motor and transmission, and you might have been able to see it in another clip. I'll put a picture right here if I can find one where it shows it. But you can see that gap in there right here is a lot tighter than it probably used to have been. Well, than it was if you saw it before, if you could remember. And the issue that was going on there was when we put the motor in, we were on a time crunch and we didn't have time to finish the swap. We were on vacation and we had time to work on it. And we left the motor just chilling. We splined it up to the transmission, but we just left it sitting pretty much on the original motor mounts, and it just wasn't mounted in, and we only really got one bolt in the transmission. So that was the issue that we were having. I had forgotten that we hadn't completely bolted up the transmission, because I remember us getting it sucked up with smaller bolts, but I had forgotten that we did not put the actual full-size bolts in it and get everything completely tightened up. So I went ahead and did that, stuck all the bolts in it, and went around, put I think there was like 5 of them, something like that. But that just completely resolved that issue. That was exactly what it was. So I can get it around. As you can tell, it's in a different spot than it was. Had it parked right there for a little while. That's where I was working on it. And then it sat over there for a minute. I literally just moved it from there, backed it up, and pulled it in here. So that means that the clutch is working fine. It does still need bled for sure, because if the truck sits for a while, you can have to pump the clutch to get it to work, to build up pressure, because it still has a little bit of air in it. So that's completely understandable. But that'll be something that I can fix in a little bit, so we can work on that. But for today's episode, we are going to work on hooking up all of the coolant lines and get coolant into the truck, so I can actually get it up to temperature and see if it runs a little bit better, and possibly we'll set the base timing. We'll do that today, because I just have it, it's just kind of chilling right now. It's kind of loose. So we'll set the base timing and get that right. I did go and purchase this fan, and I got this pulley and already painted it from a junkyard, and the pulley fits perfectly fine. It's it's a K24 one. It's all right. But the fan I actually had to get off of a VG30 Xterra, because I knew that the bolt pattern and that center bit were the same, so I knew that would work, but I was unsure if the length on the clutch was right. And I stuck it in there, and whenever the radiator's in here, the fan does contact the radiator. So this fan clutch is not going to work. So I'm going to have to get that swapped out eventually. It's this shank right here that's too long. And I'd imagine that's because the 4 cylinders are 4 cylinders long versus the V6s, which are only 3 cylinders long. So the shank on that has to be a little bit longer. So I think if we get all the coolant and stuff like that hooked up, we'll just have to run it without the fan, which is alright, because it's currently 40 degrees outside, so I think the truck won't have any problems there. I think it'll take a while to get up to temperature, so that'll be okay. And then after we do that, we will figure out, I've got the fans off of the original Z motor, the Z24, but I'm not sure, they are the same V drive, but I'm not sure if the length is right. The other truck was just a generic baseline, so it was a base model, so it didn't have power steering and it didn't have air conditioning, so it only driven the water pump and the alternator off of the crank. So it should be relatively the right size. But if not, I have something else that we might try, and we'll see if that works. But yeah, we just have to get the radiator hoses, get all these lines hooked up. I've got a special hose that I've already got. I got it a while ago, but it goes up in there from the intake to the thermostat. I want to be kind of a pain to get in, but we'll have to get that one in. That one's brand new. And then once we do that, we will wire, at least try to wire. I'll check the resistance levels, but we'll wire the water temperature gauge from the sending unit from the KA24, which is right. Yeah, it's this one here. And it runs in there, and I already know where the wire is. I just have to figure out where to hook it up to the original one on the truck. I guess I could probably find the wire somewhere in the original harness and then just splice it there and see if it works. But I'll look up if the resistances are the same and to see if it, just will plug and play. But I think that is it. That's the game plan for today's episode. After we do that, we might try to get a little bit of air in the tires. I put a cap on that one because the valve stem was leaking, but I put a valve stem cap on it and it seems to be holding air a lot better. I mean, this is a week and it still has air in it, so we'll get those set up, and then I might try to get it on the street. We'll see. We'll see how it runs whenever I can get it up to temp, but that might be in another video. So I'll see you guys there. We're gonna keep on working. Alright everybody, so got all of the hoses on. Got this one here. This one goes to the intake. It's actually a heater hose. It comes around here, comes through here, and then it goes to here, and this is the I guess the return for the heater core. But then from this one it goes over here, and you can't really see it. You might be able to see it. No, not really. But there's a metal fitting that comes off of the block, and this runs to that, and that's actually the feed for the heater core. Right now I'm not really too worried about running the heater core because I'm not going to be driving it. It's winter time right now, but I'm not going to be daily driving it, so it'll probably be springtime by that point. And it usually down here it doesn't get very cold. In the springtime it warms up pretty quick, so we're not too worried about that right now. That'll be super easy to fix later. We got that bypassed, so it runs from the block just straight back to the return, to the cooling system. And they got the little the U hose here, and this goes from the intake to the thermostat housing. And then I believe that is really the only hoses. It's just these three, and then obviously upper and lower radiator hose, which are no problem. One goes here and one goes here. So got those done. I'm trying to think about if I had done anything else. I don't think I did. The next step is probably we're gonna pull this fan off here, stick the radiator in. I might try to resolder it, because as you can see, these brackets are popped off, and I think they're literally just held in with just like solder that you used to solder wires. So I might be able to heat those up and get those to stick a little bit better because they got broke off. You can't really tell, but that one's kind of loose too. But we'll do that. We'll get that fixed, and then get the radiator in there. Actually, before we get the radiator in there, we're gonna flush it, and then we'll get it in there. I'll just run the garden hose with it, and then once that is in there, then we might start putting coolant in it and getting our belt situated. I found the belt from the old one. Here it is, and as you can see, it's the same style of drive, and I think it's gonna be the right size if I can maybe if I can get it around the fan. I'll just stick it in here. So I'll go around the alternator. Get the alternator pulled in. And then get it on the crank. So there it is on the crank. And there is... So yeah, I think this is going to work fine. I'm not too worried about it. Since I'm not daily driving it, I'm not too worried about buying a new one right now. So yeah, as you see, that tension's up pretty good. So I think we'll just use that one. And I think that's it. So we'll do that belt, get the fan off, fix the radiator, flush it out, and oh yeah, and we need to wire the temperature gauge. So from here, it runs back and goes into the cab. I might try to find the factory 720 wiring and see if I can trace where that is and find it in the engine bay. But if not, I'll just cut it off of the cluster wiring. And I'll do that. So we'll keep moving. Alright everybody, so we got the end brackets soldered back on. I was kind of struggling at first. This is the first time I've soldered wiring and stuff like that before, but I hadn't ever, soldered brackets this big on. I've sweated pipe before, but it was kind of similar to it, but you really had to, get a lot of material in there, and I figured it out until about probably, I think I was done with 2 of them, but I went ahead and, you probably saw me a couple times, I got the wire, I'd break a bit off and then I'd spin it around my finger and wind it up and just ball it into a ball. And then what I do is set it right here, and then I would kind of warm the area up here, get it real hot, and try to warm it here, but I didn't want to get it too hot in here, because I didn't want to mess up the factory solder. I'm not sure how this tank is attached to the core. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't mess up the seal or anything like that, or the solder for it. So just try to keep my heat up and around in here and down on this bracket. I really try to get this bracket hot. This was probably the best looking one. And basically I sat that ball in there and I kind of barely brought my heat around it and tried to get it melted into a large puddle. And then the hotter I got all this, the more it would, if you've ever sweated pipe before, it kind of, did that. It would lay into the metal and soak into it. But I think it turned out pretty good. The other ones aren't so good, but I mean they hold. That one's a little bit, that's probably the worst one, but I mean, as long as it doesn't come off, so it's pretty good. But yeah, now that that's done, we can we'll get that bad boy put in the truck and we'll get the hoses hooked up. I'm kind of worried I don't have enough hose clamps for the big one, so I might have to go do a parts run to get some of those. Once we get that radiator in, I think we might be ready for coolant. Actually, before I do the coolant, I'll make sure I wire the temp gauge, but then we might be able to start putting coolant in it, and then we might be able to start and get it at the temp, so we'll see. Alright everybody, we're back. So, it's been a little bit of time, not daytime anymore. But, as you can see, big stuff has happened. So, it took me a little while to get the radiator in. After I got these brackets re-sweated on, I guess they're soldered, whatever you want to call it. It took a little while to get, you might not be able to see them with the light, but that bolt, and there's another one down there if you can see my finger. those, and then there's two on the other side. Those took a little while to get in because after I put the brackets on, they weren't in the right spot, so the holes were a little bit too far apart. So I had to kind of wallow the holes out, and then find some bolts and get those cleaned up and stick them in. And I had to run a tap in one of the holes in the holes on the core support. But that's in now. And then after a little while, after I got that in, I started working on getting the coolant or the radiator hoses in. And these are actually the factory hoses that came with the truck. And amazingly, they both fit pretty damn good. The only thing I had to do on this one was just cut. It was probably about that long where my middle finger ends. So I just had to, probably about there, but I had to cut, you know, that off of that and get it pushed onto here. So that's on all the way. You can't really see under there, but it's pushed up as far as it'll go. So that's good. And then this one I had to cut probably about that much off the end of it. It's a little bit, it doesn't fit near as good as I want. The angle on it's not really right here. It kind of kinks down here. Not too bad. I mean, it still has its shape. I'm not worried about it collapsing. But that might be something to fix later. If I get a different radiator or something like that. But yeah, we did that. Got the belt on. It's tensioned. I stuck a pry bar in there and tightened that down. So that's tension. That'll be good. And then I also went ahead and disconnected. So this is the this goes to the temperature gauge and the KA24 harness. So it just is open-ended right now in the truck. And this is actually the Z24 wiring harness. So all of that wiring harness is still in here. That's what this is here. This is the new harness, and that's the old one. I just haven't pulled it out yet because I'm not sure what I need or not. But I pulled this. This was hanging down way below the motor. I cut the harness. You can see it's here. And pulled it out and stuck it on there. So that should run to the gauge. It should be hooked up as long as I plug the clutch in. Right now it's not hooked up because I don't have the dash in. But yeah, if we look at our to-do list here, if I can get it to where I can see it. So hook up coolant hoses, we did all that. So we can mark that one off the list. The to-do list got a little bit wet. It started raining on me and I didn't realize. Wire temp gauge, that's done. Set base timing, we haven't done that. We'll do that once once we get the coolant in it, make sure there's no leakage or anything like that, and it starts to get up to temp, then I'll worry about that. Wire attack signal to ECU. I know in the original harness, not in the original one, but the K one, there is a wire that runs. It's this one here, and it runs, and it is, you know, attack signal to ECU. That's what I labeled it as, and it runs along here, and it comes into all of this coil and power transistor harness. And I'm not sure where it wires up. I can't remember. Like, I've seen what the hard body wiring looks like, but I haven't really figured out what it ties into, because this is actually, this coil and power transistor are off of a Z31. It's actually off of a turbo one, but I'm not sure if, I don't think that makes a difference. I think it's the same. But this plug here is a little bit different, and the power transistor is a little bit different, but all in all, I mean, it works. The truck runs. And I don't really think that the attack signal to the ECU matters, because I think that's for the ECU to kind of take that in and then turn it into something that can go to, like, the gauge, the tachometer on the cluster, to get it to read right. Which right now I don't have a tachometer because it's a base truck, so it doesn't have the clock or the tachometer in the cluster. So I'm not really worried about wiring it up right now. So I don't think I need that. I don't think that actually tells the ECU the RPMs. I think the crank sensor, or the cam sensor, I'm not sure what it's called, but the thing in the distributor, this thing here, I think that tells the ECU when to fire that, which I think also, you know, that's how the ECU can tell the RPM based on that. So that's why I'm not too worried about it. The truck runs without it, so I don't think the ECU needs it. And I don't think it'll help it run or really anything. It might do some stuff with the idle. I'm not completely sure. But I think it'll be okay. So, back onto my list that I knocked off a second ago. So that's why we're unsure about that, but I'll go ahead and, well, I'll leave it there. Figure out belt situation, we did that. Knock that off. Flush radiator, we did that. I should have put on there fixed brackets too, but we already did that. So we need to set the timing. I guess I probably should have put bled and fill with coolant. But that's the next thing. I was going to try to wash it. I figured, I kind of assumed my timeline would go a little bit better. I didn't think that I would have to completely re-put those brackets on, and I didn't think it would take so long. So, I mean, we're not really too worried about washing it. Plus, it's been raining pretty much since I made that list. So, we don't really need to wash it. That might be something I do later, just to get all the algae and tree sap off of it that's been growing on it since it's been parked. So yeah, I'm gonna start putting coolant in it and getting it bled. And I think that's it. I think we can run it and see what it does. We'll do that and maybe let it idle for a little bit and see if the temperature gauge is working. So I'm gonna cut this and we'll get to doing that. It's always important on Nissans. A lot of all Ks and I think SRs and stuff right here. It says don't open whenever hot. It's a bleeder. It's a little 10mm. If I plug my hole, plug the hole with my finger, pour this shit in. You see, it's kind of slow going in. I don't really want to go in, but then as soon as I pull my finger off, it goes. So I always want to take that out, fill it, and then once it starts coming out of that hole that I just plugged my finger with, then you want to, you know, plug it and put the little tin that comes out of it. It has a crush wash on it. It's pretty important to keep it from leaking. Do all that and then, you know, plug it and then fill the radiator up the last little bit, and then he should be bled. Shit. I fucked up. No. There we go. Quickly. Holy shit. Didn't think it'd start coming out that fast. Okay, I want to make sure it's good and tight. Aw, shit, where are we leaking? Is that all residual? Alright, I think everything's good. Battery's hooked up. Alright, let's see how she cheeches. Actually, let me plug the clutch in really quick. And then we'll start her up. I guess it was plugged in already. Cool. Cool. Everything seems like it's working. It's got a pretty loud, I guess it's a lifty tick. I don't really know what's going on there. But, everything sounds alright. I mean, the idle's alright. I guess now we can go ahead and set the timing, so I'll get the stuff to do that. And I'll put the radiator cap back on. But yeah, I think that's good. Cool. And I don't think there's any more leaks. It doesn't look like it, but I guess we won't know until it pressurizes, so we'll see. So on a hard body KA, the stock timing is 10 degrees before top dead center, which is the from the left. It's the fourth mark from the left, from the leftmost mark. So you probably can't see it on here, but no, they're not lined up right now. But on this part here, we're looking to line it up with that little peg there, if you all can see that. And there'll be one mark that's top dead center, one to the left of it that is -5 before top dead center, so I guess after top dead center. So we'll have -5, 0, and then there'll be another one 5, and then 10 is the one that we're looking for. And I think I marked it yellow, so I think it's like, or maybe it's white, yellow, white, but we're looking for like the one past it, the second one. So we'll do that. If you've never set timing before, basically you have to get a timing light. That's, you know, first step, otherwise you can't do it. It'll have 2 prongs. You put one on positive, one on negative, if I can get it on there. Stick them on there. That's what powers, it's got a light in it, and that's what powers it. And then we're looking for the number 1 plug wire. You take this thing, it's like a magneto or something, I forget what they call it, but you want to try to keep it away from these other ones. You want to keep it isolated. It's not a huge deal if it's sent right here, but it might mess it up a little bit. So there's that. And basically you'll pull the trigger, and it's not going to do it now because it's not getting a signal, but you'll pull the trigger and it'll shoot a light whenever it picks up a spark on this, which means it'll fire whenever the motor's at top dead center. So then you'll see that, and then you'll basically want to set the distributor, and that'll, you know, that's how you set it. And you'll be looking for the marks, and it'll flash, and it'll, every time it flashes, it's like a picture, it's like a shutter. So you'll see where that mark is, the mark that you're looking for, and relative to that little pin. So you want to line up whatever mark you're trying to line up. That's the first thing you have to figure out, which mark you're looking for, and then you put it with the peg. By turning, you'll want to loosen your distributor cap, and you'll turn it like this. So we'll leave it where it is. We'll set that there. I think everything's good. And I'm gonna go turn her on, and we'll come back here and see if it works. I think that timing light kind of works. It's kind of jank. We'll see. We'll see if it chooches. Oh, I honked the horn. Alright, so the light ain't working. There we go. So right now, you can see that the yellow one is top dead center. So we're about perfect on our time almost right now. Right about 9 or 8 degrees. So I think what we can do is set it at like 9 and see. So yeah, we're at about 8 right now, I think. If I put it to 10, yeah. So see if I move the knob, it moves a little bit. That's the advance. So right there is 0. So actually we're more like 6 or 7, but we're looking for 10. So what I can do is I can set this knob at 10 and then turn my distributor whatever way I need to, and it will turn the timing, and I'm trying to get it on that middle mark. If I can get it to stay. That right there looks pretty good. And then we can turn it back to 0 and see. So we're a little bit under that mark still. I'm going to turn it a little bit more. Might need to hold it and tighten it up. We'll see. I'll get a wrench. I think it's 12. Get a ratchet. Don't worry about all that smoke. That's just from the header, from it being wet and whatnot and greasy. That's the wrong way. There we go. So basically, whenever you get your timing set, you want to make sure that's tight and it stays where you put it. So right now it's at 5 actually. We're gonna go a little bit more. There we go. Now it's staying at about 10. So I'm gonna try to hold it right there and get it tight. And then we can verify it. I got that tight, so it shouldn't move. We'll shine it again. And it ain't looking so good. It's looking like it went back. See if I can't get that to move a little bit. Man, this thing's smoking like crazy. Need to pop that loose again, just barely. That's a little bit better. Right there is perfect. Cool. All right, let's go turn her off before she burns up. Is the temp gauge working? It might be. Woo, steamy. That's all the oil and shit and greasiness and whatnot and moisture on that header, but that's no problem. That ain't oil or anything like that. We're not worried about that. Cool beans. All of this over here is from that coolant we were spilling out of the bleeder. That's no deal. It's no problem at all. I didn't even tie it. Thermostat ain't even open yet. She's still cold. Cool. Yeah, I think that'll do it. We need to get a fan, but that's something I might do tomorrow. I think I can go to the junkyard. There's a 720 there. I might film a little bit of that. We'll see. But yeah, that should be good. So coolant stuff and timing is done. So peace out, losers.